A strange phenomenon is spreading in China, with desperate young people everywhere. China's epidemic continues to spread. Unknown pneumonia outbreak? Pilot testing launched. Crisis is brewing in Guangdong. In the past, the wish of the older generation in mainland China was simple: to have enough food to feed their children. The wish of parents was to see their children succeed, to get into college and make a name for themselves. And the wish of today's youth? To have a job, make a living, and survive. But a strange phenomenon is spreading, and it's becoming impossible to ignore. In the past, young people supported the elderly, but now the roles have reversed. The elderly are feeding the young. The streets are now full of disheartened young people, their spirits as bleak as their prospects, while energetic elderly people with vitality fill the squares. The contrast is striking. The reality for young people today is harsh. After graduation, many are unemployed, their dreams crushed by a system that offers them no chance to thrive. They no longer believe they can change their fate or break free from societal constraints. Their only desire is a simple job to support themselves, a far cry from the ambitions their parents once held for them. They no longer ask for money from their families, and many now feel like the discarded scraps of society. They can't win, and they can't even lie down in peace. Each day they submit resumes, tirelessly searching for work, only to be met with silence and rejection. Frustration, confusion, and despair consume them. But life goes on, relentlessly. People often praise the post-00s for being clear-headed and pragmatic in the workplace. Yet, they fail to see the darker side. These young individuals are being used by a system that praises them publicly, but exploits them privately. The older generation, overwhelmed by the system, hides behind the youth, pushing them to challenge the system, only to watch as the post-00s are fired for their idealism. The veterans, meanwhile, remain in their positions, unscathed, smirking at the naive newcomers. The societal pressure is growing increasingly intense. Involuntary overtime is becoming the norm, with salaries stagnating or even decreasing. If you don't work overtime, you're marginalized. If you do, your health deteriorates. But the environment is such that there is no choice. You must burn yourself out just to survive. And after all this effort, no promotions, no salary increases. Instead, a medical record from the hospital. How long has it been since you last laughed joyfully? People rarely talk about pure happiness anymore. Even something as simple as going out to play has become a bitter joke. Conversations that used to be filled with gossip, basketball, or amusing anecdotes have turned into long-winded complaints about the struggles of daily life. More and more young people are choosing not to buy homes, not to get married, and not to have children. If they can't even take care of themselves, why drag someone else down? There was a joke circulating online. I had the opportunity to become a rich second generation, but my parents didn't seize it. It's not about blaming the previous generation for the struggles of the current one. It's about the reality that when the older generation can't live a decent life, the younger generation has no chance either. Opportunities are far fewer than they were for their parents. Why do young people lie flat? Because they've realized that no matter how hard they try, they can't reach the starting point of others. How can they be convinced that only those who endure hardship can rise above? When their hard work yields no better life, how can they be told that perseverance will change their destiny? Some are born to succeed, others are born to toil endlessly. The cruel truth of this society is that, for ordinary people, no matter how hard they work, they may never reach the place they dream of. So, if they're destined to be cattle and horses, why not make their lives easier? Why exhaust themselves for a socialist regime of the CCP when they get little in return? China's epidemic continues to spread. Unknown pneumonia outbreak, pilot testing launched. At the end of 2024, the number of pneumonia and white lung patients in mainland China surged. The authorities claimed they were conducting pilot tests for unknown pneumonia, and people's concerns continued into the new year. Dr. Xiao Chen from China ICU. An urgent notice was issued. Let me show you 3 test reports first. The first one was positive for influenza A, the second one was positive for influenza A, and the third one was positive for influenza A and COVID-19. The new coronavirus has not disappeared in China. The Chinese Communist Party authorities ordered hospitals not to mention COVID-19 and continued to cover it up with names such as influenza and mycoplasma pneumonia. Over the past month, the virus has entered a high incidence period again, both in the south and the north, and the infection rate among children has increased sharply. There are long queues at children's hospitals in Beijing and Tianjin. China parents. I took my child to the children's hospital for treatment at around 1 a.m., and the queue was over 800. We just finished the treatment. The children's hospital is overcrowded again. Chinese people. It's 7:30 in the morning and there are already so many people. The Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention claimed on December 26th that China's influenza has entered the seasonal epidemic period as a whole, and the influenza virus positive rate is on the rise. Nationwide, influenza virus infections have surpassed other respiratory pathogens, such as rhinovirus, with most cases being influenza A. People said this wave of viruses is very powerful. After being infected, they feel sore all over, as if they were beaten, have no strength, and feel very uncomfortable. Chinese people. I have no strength in my body. I had a fever of 38.7 degrees last night. My body alternates between feeling cold and hot. Sometimes cold, sometimes hot, like ice and fire. How far have you endured? I just have a severe sore throat now. Before this, many hospitals in Xi'an had issued emergency reminders that this influenza is coming fiercely, not an ordinary cold, and is highly contagious. Some people were directly admitted to the ICU after being infected. Children should be more alert to white lungs, as some children are infected with 3 pathogens simultaneously. Miss Li from Xianyang, Xi'an. Recently, many children have caught colds, and they may not be colds but a new wave of epidemics that may have started. On December 27th, the National Center for Disease Control and Prevention of the Communist Party of China claimed at a press conference that the agency is piloting active monitoring of unknown cause pneumonia and will gradually promote it after it is improved. At present, infectious disease monitoring, early warning, and emergency command information platforms have been established in Beijing, Tianjin, Hubei, and Zhejiang provinces. Some people told NTD that the epidemic in China is very serious. Many people around them have died of illness recently, including many young people. The number of sudden deaths has also increased sharply. They suspect the authorities are concealing the epidemic again. Mr. Peng, a farmer from Hunan, said, "A lot of people have caught colds, and they are basically all positive. Some have rhinitis or something. 7 or 8 people died around here this week. Some were 50 or 60 years old, some were 70 or 80 years old, and some were 40 years old. Almost all of them have died in the past 2 years, and there is no one left in the countryside." Mr. Wang, a citizen of Xi'an. "There are many people in the hospital, and many people died suddenly, which may be related to the new coronavirus. Crisis is brewing in Guangdong." After visiting Guangdong province, once regarded as the world's factory and the national economic engine, the Swiss Neue Zürcher Zeitung correspondent in China found that a social crisis is brewing there. Guangdong province is China's most important production center, but factories are laying off workers in large numbers, and protests by unemployed workers are also increasing. The article stated, Guangdong province was once regarded as the world's factory and the national economic engine. In Guangdong, workers mass-produce pants, mobile phones, and household appliances. Almost everything Western consumers need comes from Guangdong. In addition, countless factories serve the domestic Chinese market. When the economy was good, 50 million of Guangdong's 80 million people were employed in the secondary industry. But weak domestic demand in China has led to more and more factories in Guangdong closing down. Many Chinese have lost money in the stock market, and the real estate crisis has caused the value of houses to plummet. The result is, people are tightening their purse strings. A survey by the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology found that in the provincial capital of Guangzhou, 1 in 5 workers is currently engaged in unstable jobs, such as working as a courier. The article stated, "Workers are increasingly taking their anger to street protests." Data from the U.S. think tank Freedom House shows that the number of strikes across China increased by 27% year-on-year between July and September this year, and sometimes the strikes were accompanied by violence. In almost all cases, the disputes focused on layoffs and unpaid or reduced wages. The place where street protests occurred most frequently was Guangdong. According to the Hong Kong-based China Labor Bulletin, 210 protests took place in Guangdong from June to November. The protests are usually small in scale and end after a few days. However, China's rulers are extremely worried that if the economic situation deteriorates further, the protests may expand into a larger social movement. The article pointed out, but the government has not yet found any answers to the problem. Instead, China's rulers responded as they do when they feel threatened, by stepping up repression and surveillance. China's economy continues to decline, and all walks of life are in a deep depression. Physical stores are closing down one after another. Amid the wave of unemployment, more and more homeless people are appearing on the streets. A female blogger in Xiamen, Fujian. This is Wanda Golden Street in Huli, Xiamen. The video I shot at the beginning of the year showed that 50 stores had closed down, and now there are 40 stores. This should be the peak season for physical stores, but there are still so many stores closing down on one street. Mr. Li, a citizen of Xiamen, told NTD that the current economic situation is not good, people are not consuming, and physical stores are closing down one after another. Mr. Li, a citizen of Xiamen, the most prosperous Zhongshan Road and Jinshan Road were basically full of empty stores. This store can change 3 owners in a year. After taking over, there was no business for 2 or 3 months, and then they changed owners because they couldn't continue to operate. Mr. Li said that there was no business even during the National Day Golden Week. Mr. Li, a citizen of Xiamen, "This is the quietest National Day since I came here more than 20 years ago. I work in the tourism-related industry. In previous years, our business was booming, but this year there is no business. People around me, including those in my living area, who used to love traveling, don't travel anymore." Mr. Li revealed that many taxis in Xiamen have also stopped operating, and everyone has bought motorcycles to save costs. Mr. Wang, a shop owner in Dongguan, Guangdong. "Now no one has basic consumption. We are operating without profit and struggling every day. It's so sad and anxious. I haven't bought any clothes in the past 2 years. Even the vegetable market doesn't have many people buying vegetables now." The video shows that on the deserted streets of a city, a street vendor had a mental breakdown, stamping his feet and wailing. Mr. Wang, a shop owner in Dongguan, Guangdong. "Prices are rising now, including green vegetables, onions, and pork. When you open your eyes every day, you have to think about your rent and where your water and electricity bills are coming from. If you can't hold on, you can only endure it slowly. Going back to your hometown is a dead end. There isn't enough money to grow crops. There are many homeless people on the roadside now." Mr. Zhao, a resident of Shenyang. "There are often many young people sleeping on the streets in train stations and squares in many big cities. Many people are so desperate that they have no desire to live." The video shows that in first-tier cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, a large number of young people are stranded in bridge tunnels, parks, and stations. After China's National Day, physical stores are closing down again. First, let's focus on the news from China. China's National Day Golden Week, which used to be a booming business period, is unprecedentedly quiet this year, and all sectors are in a terrible state. After the National Day long holiday, the performance of physical stores has dropped sharply. Many stores can no longer hold on and are facing another wave of closures. Mr. Li, a citizen of Xiamen, revealed that Xiamen is no longer prosperous due to the large-scale withdrawal of foreign capital. And no one wants to buy houses, even if housing prices are halved. He has worked in Xiamen for more than 20 years and has contacts with fellow villagers from all walks of life. The National Day Golden Week, which used to be a booming business period, is unprecedentedly quiet this year. For example, no one goes to the barbershop anymore, and it is much cheaper to get a haircut on the roadside. Mr. Li, a citizen of Xiamen, many physical stores have closed down, and some have closed one after another along entire streets. The rent for the stores is very high, and we can't afford to keep them open. Plus, there is no business. In the past few years, our fellow villagers gathered several times a month to eat and drink. But now we don't get together even once in half a year. The impact of catering and online stores has little to do with it. The main reason is that everyone has no money, so they reduce consumption. Wages have also fallen, but prices have risen again. Mr. Wang, the owner of a convenience store in Dongguan, said that China's economic downturn and people having no money to spend have led to the closure of a large number of stores. Some stores have changed owners several times a year and still cannot remain open. Going back to their hometowns to farm does not make money, and there are more and more homeless people on the streets. Mr. Wang, the owner of a convenience store in Dongguan, sometimes I don't have enough capital to keep the store open, and I can't even make enough money for living expenses. Business is bad, and I feel very depressed and anxious. There are many people who can't pay rent, and stores are closing down. My rent is hundreds of yuan a day, and I want to sell the store, but I can't. I still have children who need to go to school, and tuition is tens of thousands of yuan a year. I haven't bought a piece of clothing in 2 years. Pharmacies and small clinics that used to be popular have also seen a wave of closures. A Guangzhou doctor who goes by the pseudonym Wang Jian said that he went to work in a small clinic after retiring. After the epidemic prevention was relaxed at the end of 2022, there were too many patients to handle. This year, however, it is very quiet, and the clinic's rent is 12,000 yuan a month, which isn't enough to cover the cost. Guangzhou Dr. Wang Jian, pseudonym. China's economy is very bad now. There is no business. Many small stalls have closed. Many clinics have closed. And there are no patients. The boss is losing a lot of money, and I haven't been paid in a year. The vaccine was paid, but those people are greedy for hundreds of billions, and the people are very angry. A Sanya education and training operator using the pseudonym Liu Yong revealed that it is difficult to do business in China, mainly due to the serious corruption of officials. Liu Yong, pseudonym, a Sanya education and training operator. Nowadays, no business can be done at all. The biggest problem in China is that private property is not protected. The boss is a lamb to be slaughtered at any time. If you do business honestly, one person will blackmail you today, and another will blackmail you tomorrow. If they say they will cut off your power and water, they will. You simply cannot run a business in a long-term and stable manner.